readers who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publisher. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Now, welcome to you, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Tuesday, August the 18th of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you out on our front page. We're going to talk about some weather. El Nino and the polar vortex are set stage for chaotic winter. Scientists don't exactly know how they interact. Well, it's still summer, but a potent El Nino is taking center stage, and meteorologists and scientists are looking ahead to see what that might mean for the nation's winter weather. Now, El Nino can have a number of effects on winter weather in the U.S. It tends to lead to wetter than average conditions across the South and less snow around the Great Lakes, the interior New England, and Pacific Northwest. But its effects could be particularly noticeable this year. The El Nino developing along the equator in the Pacific is forecast to be very strong, possibly among the strongest in modern record. Stronger El Nino events, they tend to have greater interactions with other strong planetary climate forces and then bring surprises to the winter weather, the scientists say. So the end result, El Nino's record-breaking force could enter a chaotic dance with another wintertime powerhouse, and that's the polar vortex. So what's a polar vortex? The polar vortex is the wintertime phenomena, a large area of cold air high up in our atmosphere that normally spins over the north and south poles, and the vortexes over both the Arctic and Antarctic form in the fall when the temps begin to cool. The polar vortex above the Arctic is linked to the jet stream. Both can be impacted by El Nino and bring about changes in our weather patterns. When El Nino meets the polar vortex, El Nino drives changes in the high and low pressure patterns in the troposphere. That's the lowest layer in the Earth's atmosphere where the weather happens. The strength of the polar vortex is vulnerable to large ridges and troughs that form in the lower levels of the atmosphere and influence how the jet stream moves. Now, when it gets disrupted, it can help funnel unspeakably cold air into locations in the eastern U.S. Changes in that pattern can also influence precipitation. Generally, a strong polar vortex is good news for winter weather haters out there. A weak vortex, conversely, often means cold air can funnel south from the Arctic into the central and eastern U.S. Winter impacts uncertain. Scientists can't say definitively at this point exactly which regions of the U.S. might be influenced by the El Nino's dance with our polar vortex, the jet stream, or other patterns in the atmosphere. They do know that El Nino tends to cause more of the waves that disrupt normal weather patterns and weaken the polar vortex. If the polar vortex remains strong this winter, it will be an overall milder winter regardless of the El Nino, except possibly along the west coast, they said. The winter impacts are uncertain. Now, specifics about which regions of the country could see the coldest, the driest, or the snowiest weather, well, that remains hard to pin down. In some cases, scientists say with confidence that one thing will happen, and then another thing always happens. That's not the case with the interactions among the jet stream, the stratospheric polar vortex, and El Nino. It's when this happens, there's an increased probability that something will happen. Now, the other point the scientists are raising is that if this El Nino indeed proves to be historically strong, its effects on a larger atmosphere remain a bigger question mark. This is an El Nino superimposed on top of a pretty big climate change signal, he said. We don't have a clear understanding about how that changes the teleconnections, those relationships. That's an open science question.
Democrats pin their hopes on Alaska as a Senate candidate aims to unseat her GOP opponent. Mary Peltola is an Alaskan, a Democrat, a former member of Congress, and by recent polls, the leading candidate in the Alaska Senate race. The state president Donald Trump carried 3 times. Peltola is vying to oust incumbent Senator Dan Sullivan from his Senate seat, and the polls say she has a chance in November. An Alaskan Survey Research poll August 11th reported that she held a 1.6 percentage point edge over Sullivan. The New York Times Siena poll in late June put Sullivan 2 points ahead, and an Alaska Survey Research poll in April gave Peltola a 7-point lead. Democrats hope to flip the seat in the midterms to shrink or take over the Republican majority in Congress's upper chamber. On Tuesday, August 18th, Alaska voters, that's today, will head to the poll in nonpartisan primaries, a relatively newer system in the state, enacted when voters passed a ballot initiative in 2020. The top four contenders, which Peltola and Sullivan are almost surely to be among, will head to the general election in November, where ranked choice voting is used. Political analyst Kyle Hondick of the Center for Politics said with the state's Republican lead shrinking under Trump and Peltola's overperformance in 2024, meaning she got more votes than former Vice President Kamala Harris, the seat is now a toss-up. 14 other candidates are on the primary ballot, including another man by the name of Dan Sullivan, who will remain on the ballot after a federal judge and the Alaska Supreme Court ruled against requests by Senator Dan Sullivan's team to remove it. An Alaska Survey research poll in March showed Sullivan and Peltola leading the remaining candidates by huge margins. Independent Sid Hill brought in 3.3% of the projected primary vote, followed by Republican James Ryan at 2.9%. Peltola is not new to running for Congress. She won 2 elections in 2022 to be Alaska's sole member of the House of Representatives. First, she won a special election to serve temporarily, and then she won the 2022 general election, but lost by 2.4 percentage points to now Representative Nicholas Begich, a Republican. In 2024, Trump carried Alaska by just over 13 points in that same election. A Democrat, but a different type of Democrat. As a Yupik, Alaska native, Peltola was the first Alaska Native member of Congress and first woman representing the state in the House. She would be the first Alaska Native to serve in the Senate if she won this fall. Her campaign centers on some typical Democratic talking points, like affordability, but she also taxed to the center by supporting Alaskan fisheries and oil and gas drilling in the state rather than calling in to restrict them for environmental reasons. She's a Democrat, but she's a sort of a different type of Democrat than sort of national profile Democrats, because she supports energy projects in Alaska and oftentimes connects herself to Don Young, who was the 50-year state representative in the state, and he was a Republican. Joseph Warren, a political scientist at the University of Alaska, echoed the same sentiment, saying that Peltola separated herself from the national brand of Democrats.
Immigration cases are sped through court. Critics say the rushed mega hearings, they slash due process. Lines stretched out the front doors of courthouses, overflow seating set up in the hallways, classroom-style exchanges with judges asking people to raise their hands in response to just generic questions about their cases. These are some of the scenes playing out in the courts across the country as the Trump administration increasingly turns to mass hearings to push more cases through the cumbersome immigration system. Now, these so-called mega master hearings, now they pack 50 to 100 cases into a single proceeding, are meant to trim the large backlog of cases in immigration courts run by the Department of Justice. Critics argue that the effort slashes the already limited due process that immigrants receive, giving them less meaningful time before the judge. The hearings, which have ticked up since May, come as detentions and deportations have surged in recent weeks, according to data. It also comes as the administration has made it easier for immigration authorities to deny asylum claims. More children are being brought in front of immigration judges for mass hearings, including unaccompanied minors. The controversial hearings are preliminary and offer individuals an opportunity to enter pleas or request relief, like asylum. They are similar to arraignments in criminal court and are typically the first time people appear before the immigration judge. Now, in a statement, the DOJ has said, reducing the immigration court backlog, that remains one of the highest priorities. The Justice Department is restoring integrity to our immigration system by hearing cases fairly, expeditiously, and uniformly in accordance with the law. Now, the surge is unprecedented. Master hearings are short proceedings in which judges review the government's charges and ask what, if any, legal relief an immigrant is seeking, as well as whether they have legal counsel. Judges will then schedule hearings where the request for asylum and other forms of relief are litigated. In recent months, immigration attorneys have reported a sharp increase in the number of large-scale master hearings in immigration courts across the country, from Iowa to Texas. Over 1,300 such hearings were held in June alone. Now, that's nearly a threefold jump from the same period in 2025. Deportation orders surge. These mass hearings have coincided with a sharp increase in the number of cases ruled in absentia. Now, that means the judge issued deportation orders after someone had failed to appear in the court. Of the 10,370 people assigned to hearings in June, 58% were ruled absent, according to DOJ data. Mosley and other immigration lawyers said officials provided little notice to people whose court dates were moved up by several months, or some cases, years. Advocates said some didn't show up because they're scared of being arrested inside the courthouse. Now, that's a tactic that the Trump administration employed for months before it was blocked from doing that. Other immigrants allegedly showed up, but then were issued removal orders because of the chaos in the courthouse. We have witnessed immigrants being ordered removed for missing their court dates, not because they did not come to court, but because they arrived on time and amid the overcrowding and confusion, they could not find their correct courtroom or hear their case being said. Immigration attorneys said the Trump administration is relying on high rates of absentia orders to close the cases, issue removal orders, and then funnel more immigrants into deportation proceedings. Now, the courts remain overwhelmed. Immigration courts are experiencing a backlog of over 3.4 million cases as of June, according to the Executive Office for Immigration. The number is down from 3.7 million a year earlier and a high of 3.9 million under the last year of Biden's administration, which oversaw a more than doubling of the immigration court backlog since 2021. They've made great progress at driving down the backlog, Arthur said, of our Trump administration, noting that the number of pending cases decreased in the fiscal year of 25 for the first time in a decade. Now, to expand its mass deportation agenda, the administration has also carried out a record hiring spree of immigration judges, many of whom have past ties with federal government and lack immigration law experience, the records show. Immigration attorneys and legal experts, they have criticized the administration for what they call partisan hiring practices that emphasize loyalty to the president's agenda over objective decision making. The Executive Office for Immigration Review said it evaluates all immigration judges, regardless of background, on factors such as conduct, impartiality, adherence to the law, productivity, and professionalism. The office added that all judges have a legal, ethical, and professional obligation to be impartial and neutral in adjudicating these cases.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:13. Lake Powell falls to record low as a long-term drought worsens. That reservoir helps power millions of homes. Lake Powell, the giant reservoir on the Utah-Arizona border that helps power millions of homes, has fallen to its lowest level ever amid a worsening western drought exacerbated by climate change. The lake's surface dropped to 3,519.91 feet above sea level on August 15th. The previous low was 3,519.92 feet, reached in April of 2023. Dropping below 3,490 feet, that's about 29 feet to go, could imperil the lake's ability to generate electricity, and federal officials have been pulling water out of smaller reservoirs upstream to help delay reaching that level. Nevertheless, the lake could fall close to that level, known as the minimum power pool, early next spring, according to federal predictions. Further drops could take the lake to what's known as dead pool, where it's too low to flow downstream. That could spark draconian cuts to how much drinking water is available for millions of people and imperil farms 500 miles away in California's Imperial Valley. The lake's level is recorded daily by automated gauges, and the Bureau of Reclamation cautions that readings could later be revised. But the lake has been on a downward trajectory for months and was widely expected to reach this mark around mid-August. Drought has complicated management of Lake Powell and Lake Mead outside of Las Vegas. Lake Mead fell to its lowest level ever on August 7th, is now setting a new record low daily. The Lake Powell area draws an estimated 4 million recreation visitors a year to houseboat, water ski, and kayak on the lake and enjoy its scenic side canyons along with the Rainbow Bridge Rock Arch. Climatologists and other water supply experts say a long-term drought is being exacerbated by climate change, which is altering how much snow falls in the Rocky Mountains before melting into the Colorado River. The West is warming faster than the country overall, which ultimately means less water available for farmers, businesses, and residents, said Peter Goebel, Assistant State Climatology for Colorado, earlier this year. There's no way to look at the numbers and think the Colorado River is doing well right now, Goebel said. In a world that's warmer, all signs point to droughts that will be more intense and more frequent. In June, Aaron Weiss, the executive director of the Center for Western Priorities, said that the fixes will be both really hard and really urgent. In addition to limiting lawn irrigation and paying farmers to use less water, some proposals to protect Powell and Meade call for piping water from the Mississippi River into Arizona, or hauling icebergs from the polar regions, or building nuclear-powered desalination plants off the California coast. Several environmental groups have proposed removing or entirely bypassing the Glen Canyon Dam, draining what's left into Lake Mead, and implementing stricter water conservation measures. The two reservoirs provide hydroelectricity, drinking and irrigation water to millions of Americans across the West by storing up the Colorado River. The only time they've ever been this low was when they were first being filled. The river serves 7 western states, Native American tribes, and 2 northern Mexican states with water for agriculture, irrigation and drinking, hydroelectricity, recreation, and fish and wildlife habitat. The Glen Canyon Dam created Lake Powell, and the Hoover Dam created Lake Mead. The Powell-Meade Reservoir system was designed to store water during extra wet years and release it during dry years. But long-term trends mean less snow is falling on the Colorado Rockies. Complicating matters, rapid growth of the West, possible in large part because of the reservoirs, has placed extra demand on the system. The federal plan released last month calls for significantly reducing the amount of water flowing out of Lake Mead, which would make it harder for farmers in California and Arizona to irrigate their crops and might require additional water-saving measures in many cities.
And Trump threatens to bomb Oman over the Iran deal. President Donald Trump threatened military action against Oman, an ally of the U.S., if its negotiations with Iran over the Strait of Hormuz interfere with efforts to reach a deal. If Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb the blankety blank, he said, out of them, Trump told Fox News. Outside of the talks with the U.S., Iran engaged in negotiations with Oman about reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which borders the two countries, with both Iran and the U.S. have asserted control now. But Iranian leaders have said it won't agree to a deal unless the U.S. meets certain conditions, including compensation for Tehran. Now, Trump has rejected that idea and defended the success of U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports that has sought to prevent Iranian ships from using the strait to transport oil. Trump said last week he's ready to soon declare a Strait of Hormuz a territory of the U.S. His latest remarks come as a 60-day window for the U.S. to negotiate with Iran, outlined in a memorandum of understanding in June. Now, that's set to expire, though, August 17th. The memorandum was intended to give the two sides 2 more months to hammer out a peace deal, but the parameters of the preliminary agreement, instead, they quickly fell apart, leaving no end in sight to a war that has started back in late February. Iran should wave the white flag of surrender, Trump said. He also said, I have no time schedule and I'm not in a hurry, even as the political fallout of the war in Iran is colliding in the November midterm elections. With dimming prospects for a U.S.-Iran deal to quickly emerge, Trump has repeatedly accused Iranian leaders of lying to him by saying one thing in their private negotiations and then saying the opposite in public. The two sides dispute who controls the Strait of Hormuz, which about 20% of the world's crude oil and liquefied gas pass through as a critical access point. Since the Memorandum of Understanding's unraveling, Iran has resumed attacks on ships in the strait of the Iranian leaders say lack permission to access this channel. Now, through the U.S. naval blockade, Trump claims the U.S. has opened the strait to all commercial ships other than those from Iran, crippling Iran's economy. But Iran rejects Trump's characterization, asserting that the waterway is under the complete management and control of Iran and that no ships can pass without its permission.
The Trump appeal in the Carroll case is denied. The justices strike down the president's second effort. The Supreme Court rejected for the second time an effort by President Donald Trump to avoid paying more than $5.6 million to writer E. Jean Carroll for sexually abusing her and defaming her. The court on August 17th declined to reconsider Trump's appeal of a 2023 jury verdict in a civil suit brought by Carroll. Trump had to pay Carroll the $5 million judgment plus interest after the court first rejected his appeal on June 29th. His lawyers fought the payment, arguing he deserved a chance to ask the Supreme Court to reconsider his request. It's rare for litigants to ask for a second look, or even rarer for the court to grant one. Trump's lawyer said reconsideration was warranted because the case is connected to another appeal involving Carroll they have asked the Supreme Court to hear. In that case, a Manhattan civil jury awarded Carroll $83 million from Trump in 2024 based on the conclusion that Trump defamed her in 2019 when he first denied her allegations. Trump's lawyers have argued that he should have immunity for his 2019 comments because he made them while serving as president. That use of official presidential statements matters because the court has made clear that official presidential acts may not be used as evidence to impose liability for other conduct, his lawyers told the justices, referencing the court's 2024 ruling that presidents can't be criminally prosecuted for official acts taken by a president. Trump's statements were used against him in both trials, but Trump's lawyers did not raise the immunity issue in their appeal in the first judgment. His lawyers said they focused on other appeals because the Supreme Court had not yet issued its 2024 decision about presidential immunity. The court did not explain its reasons for again rejecting that appeal. The dispute started in 2019 when Carroll said that Trump sexually assaulted her in a New York City department store in 1996. Trump fired back with allegations that she was making up the story to sell her book. Carroll sued him months later, winning the $83 million judgment. As the case was ongoing, Trump repeated the denial in a social media post in 2022. Carroll then sued Trump again under a special window of time that New York granted to sexual abuse survivors. And in 2023, a New York jury found Trump liable for sexual abuse that resulted in the $5 million verdict.
And Texas ruling on silencers opens gun rights loophole. The gun shop owners may face new confusion. A group of gun rights supporters gathered just after midnight on August the 13th to celebrate a victory and exploit a lapse in a firearms law that could signal a major shift in how the nation regulates the most dangerous guns and devices that are available. Now, Brandon Herrera, he's a 30-year-old YouTuber and Texas congressional candidate who bills himself as the AK guy. He bought an unregistered silencer, eliciting cheers from fellow enthusiasts. Gun advocates have long decried the added layers of fees and regulation that apply to devices like suppressors or silencers that muffle the noise when the gun is fired. Now, this week, a federal injunction took effect, invalidating a narrow portion of the law for people who sued over it. Backers of the challenge called the August 5th injunction a mortal wound to the National Firearms Act, that's the NFA. A Texas federal judge stayed his ruling for a week, and absent an appeal from the Trump administration, the ruling then went into effect August the 13th. The Department of Justice still has 2 months to appeal, and the lawyers have not signaled how they'll decide. It's not enough to play defense for our natural God-given constitutionality guaranteed rights, Herrera said at the silencer shop in Leander as he received the first unregistered suppressor from a gun shop in more than 90 years. Now, Kirsten Pelz, that's a spokesperson for the DOJ, he told USA Today the department respects the Americans' Second Amendment rights and is currently assessing the impact of the court's rulings. Now, the festive mood at the shop in Texas also kicked off off a wave of confusion for gun shop owners. Many said they fielded calls asking about buying suppressors on August 13th, and then they had to explain this narrow ruling. The ruling only applies to plaintiffs in the case, but has gun safety advocates concerned it's sure to kick off a domino effect of challenges from around the country. 8 states and the District of Columbia have added restrictions banning the private use of silencers. However, silencers remain subject to NFA restrictions in the other 42 states. Firearm industry veteran Rob Pincus, he wrote on social media that he wants to see more clarity from the DOJ or the ATF about the impact of this Texas ruling. Some organizations have used the ruling as a membership drive since theoretically members or litigators could be covered. Similarly, specific gun manufacturers that joined the suit, like Palmetto State Armory, they're hoping to exploit this narrow ruling. This is a big deal. It's progress, but it is not all that clear exactly what's happened, and there's no doubt things will be made more clear soon, Pincus said. Now, for decades, the National Firearms Act, it had required a special permit and a payment of $200 to obtain a tax stamp for each device. Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that tucked in a provision to lower the fee from $200 to $0. Applicants still must submit fingerprints, a passport-style photo, and undergo an enhanced background check. The Texas judge's injunction applies to silencers, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns. The named plaintiff in the case was Stephen Williford, the man who confronted the mass shooter at the church in Sutherland Springs back in 2017 with his own AR-15. Now, the suit was backed by the Gun Owners of America, which brands itself as a no-compromise wing of the gun lobby. The organization has said for years it planned to dismantle the NFA. We promised to keep fighting until these restrictions were gone, and now our members are putting the historic victory into action, they said. The era of federal registration for unconstitutionally protected arms, that must end, he said. The law changes have prompted some to speculate whether fully automatic machine guns could become legal or more available, but those fall into an additional layer of regulation that would need further challenges. West Virginia and Kentucky have explored state-based registration for machine guns as a workaround. Gun safety groups, they warn of the law's erosion. Leading gun safety groups balked at the decision by the DOJ to let the law lapse. Less than a week after Senate Republicans confirmed Todd Blanche as Attorney General, DOJ has failed to defend a 100-year-old public protection against some of our nation's deadliest weapons, even as it actively defends this exact same law in other courtrooms. John Feinblatt, who's president of Everytown for Gun Safety, said in his statement.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:27, and it's on to the money section. Grocery tips from an industry vet. Knowing when to shop can help save you money. Ever wondered how grocery store employees shop for themselves? This is a column by Michelle Larson. After earning a degree in nutrition, I worked at a food co-op for 4 years. After that, I was a team leader at Whole Foods for more than 8 years. And though I pivoted careers nearly a decade ago, the tips I picked up during that time helped me save time and money. Grocery prices remain a source of frustration for many shoppers in the United States, but a few simple strategies can help stretch your budget and make trips to the store more efficient. Here are some tips. Sales taxes tell you how much time you have. Many stores' sales tax have fine print that tells you when the deal ends. Checking this information for items you use regularly is a smart way to maximize your grocery budget without taking up unnecessary pantry space or buying so much that it spoils before you use it. End caps and pallet drops often, but not always, offer deep savings. When we built end caps, those things at the end of the aisles, or did pallet drops, big displays in the middle of the wide aisles, we typically offered the product at a healthy discount to justify bringing in so much of it. Some displays were geared more toward an upcoming season or holiday, so don't assume every large display equals a great deal. The newest product is usually at the back. Grocery stores stock shelves using a first in, first out method, which means the freshest product should be at the back. Reaching past the front row for highly perishable items can buy you several extra days of shelf life. Many stores offer case discounts. We'd go through a lot of pinto beans in our house, so I buy them by the case, which often earns me a discount. To get the deal yourself, you'll first want to verify that your store offers the option. Some do dedicated case lot sales only once or twice a year, and then ask an employee to get you a sealed case from the inventory. Taking loose cans off the shelf doesn't count. Unit pricing reveals the better deal. Individually packed snacks and single rolls of paper towels can be convenient, but the per unit price, i.e. cents per ounce, also tends to be higher. What you might not realize is most retailers print that breakdown right on the shelf tag, meaning there's no need to open your calculator to see whether its sizing up is worth it. Store brand products are a smart substitute. One of the first things I learned working in grocery is that many private label products use the same major manufacturers as name brand counterparts, but sell them for considerably less. By shopping the store's version of your favorite items, you stand to save significantly without sacrificing quality. Loyalty apps house digital coupons and extra ways to save. Most grocery stores' loyalty apps are designed to highlight the best deals in one place. Along with digital coupons, you might find personalized deals based on past purchases or bonus savings for spending an extra dollar amount. If you shop at the same store regularly, you can save a lot without adding much extra effort. Make your shopping list in logical order and saves time. After touring dozens of stores during my time in leadership, it became clear that most grocery stores follow a similar layout. Produce and the meat counter first, non-perishables next, and dairy and frozen last. Knowing this, I take a couple extra minutes to make my shopping list in that order so I don't waste time circling back for the things I've already passed. Shopping multiple stores gives you the best of both worlds. Working in both a small co-op and a large natural foods chain gave me a first-hand look at how many differently everyone prices their products. When I can, I go to big box stores or buying clubs for widely available items at lower prices, and to smaller markets for perishables and specialty items, where the selection tends to be better.
People want fixed for high care costs. 4 in 10 adults, they cite costs of health insurance. On this much, Democrats and Republicans do agree. The cost of health insurance and healthcare is the biggest problem in healthcare today. A new survey said more than 4 in 10 adults cited the cost of health insurance as the biggest problem that needs to be fixed in the U.S. healthcare system. This sentiment was consistent across the political affiliation. 45% of Republicans and 44% of Democrats and 42% of independents naming health insurance as their top concern. But many people also worried about the amount they spend on copays and deductibles for health expenses like medical bills, lab tests, or prescription drugs. About 36% of adults cited these out-of-pocket costs as their second biggest worry about the U.S. healthcare system. Millions drop their ACA plans as subsidies expire. More than 3 million ACA enrollees dropped their coverage as of February amid higher monthly premiums and the expiration of enhanced subsidies that made the health insurance more affordable. When Congress did not extend the enhanced subsidies that expired at the end of 2025, average costs for ACA enrollees who wanted to keep their insurance plans, it soared 114% in the year of 2026. According to KFF, that's a health policy nonprofit. More than half of the survey participants who bought ACA plans or other coverage directly from their insurance companies cited cost as their biggest worry, the survey has said. If people aren't able to afford their ACA premiums, and they're already seeing evidence of that, well, they're going to become uninsured, he said. Most working-age adults and families get insurance through the workplace, and those costs are rising too. Companies expect insurance costs for their employees to rise nearly 7% in the year of 26. That means insurance benefits will cost about $18,500 per employee in 2026, according to a consultant. More cuts are on the way under a provision of the Republicans' 2025 budget bill that would make millions of Medicaid recipients work, complete job training, or volunteer to maintain their government-funded health insurance. As many as 18.5 million people must meet the work requirement to maintain their coverage. And the Congressional Budget Office projects that more than 5 million will lose their Medicaid coverage by the year of 2034. So who can fix health affordability, government or insurance companies? Now, while both Republicans and Democrats largely agree that the healthcare is driving up the cost of living, well, they differ on the prescription to fix these expenses. The survey said 65% of Democrats cited the federal government as best able to solve the problem of health insurance costs, but 36% of Republicans said the government should act on health insurance costs. Republicans were twice as likely as Democrats to say health insurance companies were better able to address insurance premium costs.
Half of American workers say they can never retire. Nearly half of working Americans doubt that they will be able to fully retire, a new survey says. Retirement fears are running high, according to the 2026 Retirement Expectations Survey from Thrivent, the financial service company. Among the concerns, 47% of workers doubt they will be able to retire completely. Only 58% of workers think they'll have enough money to retire on schedule, and 36% of workers expect to continue earning income in retirement. People are looking at retirement more as a transition than a finish line, said Jason Rogoff, a financial advisor. The survey, conducted by Ipsos in June, reached more than 2,000 American adults. It comes at a time when American workers are worried about relentless inflation, Social Security shortfalls, conflict in the Middle East, and the economic threat posed by AI. More than half of workers surveyed said they fear each of those things will hurt their retirement. We're seeing people look at retirement just a little bit differently than they have in the past, Rogoff said. The findings may also illustrate a broader lack of retirement confidence among employees. Experts said, in an era when Americans are expected to do their own retirement saving, chiefly through IRAs and 401ks. Retirement is a big math problem, said Robert Brokamp, a senior retirement advisor at the Motley Fool. And you either have to have a really good tool or a really good expert who can help you nail down the numbers. More than a third of the workers surveyed for the Thrivent report said they feel they are behind other people their age in saving for retirement. Half of workers said thinking about retirement makes them anxious. When the survey asked people how much savings they think they will need to retire in comfort, only 23% chose a figure under $1 million. The average person doesn't know what enough is, Brokamp said. Many past surveys and studies have shown American workers are haunted by fears that they won't have enough money in retirement. One recent survey put the retirement magic number at $1.2 million, and others have ranged higher. But most Americans have nowhere near that much money saved for retirement. Federal data shows that around half of Americans have retirement accounts at all. Retirement saving is less of a problem for the wealthy. Among the people in the top 10% by net worth, more than 90% have retirement accounts, and the median balance is $900,000, according to the 2022 survey of consumer finances. We've all heard of the K-shaped economy, Brokamp said, and I think there's a K-shaped retirement trajectory. Fears about retirement savings prompt many people to assume they will keep working more or less forever. Roughly 3/4 of workers plan to work for pay after they officially retire, according to the 2026 Retirement Confidence Survey from the Employee Benefit Research Institute. Yet only 31% of retirees are actually working, the same survey found. Returning to the workforce from retirement can be difficult. Many retirees find they can get by on Social Security income and modest savings. And here are 3 retirement savings tips. The Thrivent report recommends steps workers can take to shore up their retirement goals. Save something for retirement every year. Many workers save little or nothing for retirement, but even small retirement contributions can compound into large sums given enough time. In 27 years, for example, a single $1,000 contribution can grow into $15,000 based on past stock market performance. We always say that it's really important to put something away to have some consistency, even if it's a little bit. Small, consistent retirement contributions will have a very meaningful impact over time. Consult a retirement planner. Saving for retirement does not require elaborate planning. One rule of thumb says you should save 10 to 15% of your salary in a retirement account invest the money in broad index funds. A full retirement plan, however, is far more complex. It needs to account for many different scenarios, covering when you might retire, how long you might live, and how the market might perform, among other factors. It's very important to have a plan in place and one that's adjustable based on the economy, Rogoff said. A financial advisor can help by running the numbers to determine when you can safely retire and how much you can safely spend in retirement. Aren't ready to hire a human expert, Brokamp said, then consider online retirement planners. Thrivent, AARP, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Vanguard, and many other sites offer planning tools. You have so many decisions to make when you retire that you didn't make when you were working, Brokamp said. When you work, you're just saving. Save for emergencies, too. Saving for emergencies is an important piece of a retirement plan, financial advisors say, because it covers the financial shocks that can stop you from saving for retirement. The goal is to set aside enough money to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses, and that money should be in an accessible account, not a tax shelter retirement account, where early withdrawals can incur penalties. In a 2025 report, Investopedia estimated the average U.S. family should have at least $35,000 in emergency savings, but any amount of savings is better than none.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Ring service. Our time is 12:40. We're still in the money section. Now we have USA Today's Human Resource column, which is written by our expert, Johnny C. Taylor. Questioning the boss's decisions is necessary. So here's our first question. My manager recently made a decision that affects my team's workload and results, and I disagree with the approach. I want to raise concerns, but I don't want to come across as difficult or insubordinate. Is it appropriate to question your boss's decision? And if so, how can that be done professionally? And this question comes from Xavier. So here's Johnny's answer. Yes, in fact, good leaders should want you to question their decision respectfully and constructively. Healthy organizations, they aren't built on blind agreement. They're built on thoughtful dialogue. The issue isn't whether you disagree, it's how you handle that disagreement. Now, before raising concerns, remember your manager may be working with information that you don't have, like budget constraints, customer commitments, legal considerations, or broader business priorities. They often shape decisions in ways that are not immediately visible to everyone. But that doesn't mean your concerns aren't valid. It means you should approach the conversation with curiosity rather than certainty. Seek to understand before you seek to be understood. So, in other words, start by asking questions to better unpack the reasoning behind the decision. You may discover information that changes your perspective, or you may uncover an opportunity to improve the outcome. Of course, managers aren't infallible. Sometimes respectful questions surface risks, unintended consequences, or better alternatives that genuinely strengthen the final decision. That's exactly why healthy debate matters. If, after a conversation, you still believe there is a better path forward, frame your concerns around business outcomes, not personal preferences. Explain how the decision could affect productivity, customer service, quality costs, risk, or your team's ability to meet its goals. Now be specific, avoid emotional language, and whenever possible, offer some alternatives. Leaders value employees who bring solutions, not just objections. At SHRM, now that's one of my favorite guiding principles, is challenge, decide, commit, because it strikes the right balance between healthy debate and organizational alignment. During the decision-making progress, the floor is open for anyone in the room to challenge ideas thoughtfully. Ask questions, share your perspective, offer data on experiences that others may not have considered. But once a decision has been made, everyone has a responsibility to commit to making it successful, even if it wasn't the path that they advocated. Once the decision is made, continue to relitigate it. Continuing to relitigate it creates confusion. It erodes trust, and then it slows the execution. So one piece of advice I often share is this. Challenge the decision, but never challenge the relationship. Respectfully disagreeing with your manager, that's part of building a healthy workplace. Undermining your manager or making the disagreement personal is not. Healthy organizations, they don't expect employees to remain silent. They expect them to speak up thoughtfully, listen carefully, and then they can move forward together. The goal isn't to win the debate, it's to help the organization make the best decision possible.
Fast food chains can't rely on deals for traffic. U.S. fast food chains, including McDonald's, that spent the second quarter battling to pull in price-conscious diners, discovered discounts alone were no longer enough to keep them coming back. Value meals and promotions have been the industry's most reliable traffic driver for the past 2 years, as consumers, squeezed by inflation, sought cheaper meals. But results showed the strongest performers paired bargains with menu innovation, quality improvements, and a smoother customer experience. The approach helped chains such as Yum! Brands Taco Bell attract budget-conscious consumers without resorting to blanket discounting across their menus. Its $5, $7, and $9 meal boxes were a hit with customers, while the chain kept introducing new menu items that encouraged spending beyond the entry-level deal. Value succeeds when it is really clear and simple, and does not feel like a bait and switch, said Rachel Royster, Director of Strategic Planning and Innovation at Connections, a food service consultancy. Taco Bell reported a 7% rise in same-store sales during the quarter, while global comparable sales at McDonald's rose 1.3%. McDonald's struggled despite its under $3 menu and a $4 breakfast meal. CEO Chris Kempczynski said loyal customers accounted for about 2/3 of the traffic shortfall and blamed execution rather than strategy. Other chains found that promotions did little to offset pressure on lower-income consumers. Wendy's, whose Biggie Bag value meal started at $5, reported a 7% drop in the U.S. same-restaurant sales and withdrew its annual forecast, while Wingstop posted a 7.5% decline despite promotions including $1 chicken wings. Wingstop CEO Michael Skipworth said its sales sagged in urban areas where households typically face more financial pressure, even as visits climbed as much as 9% in higher income markets. Wingstop stock has lost more than 3/4 of its value in the last 6 months. The quarter also showed that restaurants do not have to be the cheapest option to succeed. Restaurant brands Burger King was among the clearest winners. Executives credited promotions including its 2 for $5 and 3 for $7 offers, alongside broader efforts to improve operations and menu quality for strong sales growth. Burger King is doing discounts, but not all the time, and when they do, they make it creative, said independent restaurant consultant John Gordon. Domino's Pizza also benefited from value-focused offerings and loyalty initiatives that help drive traffic and support sales. Chipotle delivered strong results while limiting price increases to about 1% to 2%.
And continuing on with the food idea, Philly cheesesteak named America's best sandwich. After weeks of voting and regional food rivalries, Hellmann's has crowned America's favorite sandwich. The mayonnaise brand created a nationwide bracket featuring sandwiches representing all 50 states as part of its celebration of the nation's 250th birthday. Now, more than 10,000 sandwich fans participated, casting nearly 100,000 votes through the competition. The bracket turned regional favorites into a national food showdown, with fans backing sandwiches that represent their home states and local food traditions. But in the end, Pennsylvania's Philly cheesesteak, that emerged on top, giving the state bragging rights to what Hellmann's is calling America's favorite sandwich. A final showdown between Pennsylvania and Kansas. The competition ultimately came down to a matchup between Pennsylvania's cheesesteak and Kansas's burnt-end sandwich. Hellmann's promoted the final as a showdown to determine America's sandwich. He urged fans to cast their votes and make sandwich history. The Kansas entry featured burnt ends, a barbecue staple particularly associated with Kansas City, while Pennsylvania was represented by its iconic cheesesteak. Now, the contest began with 50 sandwiches divided into 4 regional brackets: the Midwest, the West, the Northeast, and the South. Over 5 rounds of voting, the field was narrowed from 50 sandwiches to just 16 before progressing through the savory 16, then the exquisite 8, the flavorful 4, and the final chow down. The Philly cheesesteak defeated Kansas's burnt end sandwich in the championship matchup. The other sandwiches to reach the Elite Eight, that included Nevada's Patty Melt, Texas had the chopped brisket sandwich, New Jersey had the Italian sub, Illinois's Italian beef, Alabama's pulled chicken with white sauce, and then California's had the tuna salad. So, what's next for the cheesesteak? Company officials said they were surprised that the BLT did not advance further along from a strong start in the voting, calling it one of the country's most iconic sandwiches. They also said Kansas's burnt end sandwich exceeded expectations by reaching the championship round, despite being a less familiar choice for many Americans. Now, Hellman said the competition was created to celebrate the sandwiches that help define regional food culture across our country. America has official symbols for its bird, its flower, and its tree. It was about time we settled a sandwich, said Jessica Gorgiou, the Senior VP of Marketing for Condiments at Unilever North America. America, they chose the Philly cheesesteak and will be celebrating it the Hellman's way with a creamy spread of America's #1 mayonnaise, she said. Anything else,
Yeah,
Alan?
we have a story here about tropical storm in Hawaii. Lala is the name of the storm, leaves flooding across Hawaii. Residents and emergency crews across Hawaii were assessing damage and clearing debris as tropical storm Lala moved away from the islands after leaving widespread power outages and flooding in its wake. The storm weakened from a Category 1 hurricane to a tropical storm on August 16th as it tracked west away from Hawaii. But forecasters and officials warned hazards would linger. At least 100 homes were destroyed or lost in the storm as floodwaters inundated communities. The National Hurricane Center discontinued tropical storm warnings for Maui County and Oahu, leaving Kauai County as the only area under a tropical storm warning on August 17th. Forecasters said the storm could strengthen again and regain hurricane status this week as it moves west across the Central Pacific, away from Hawaii. About 5 p.m. local time, August 15th, Lala's eyewall brushed along the south side of the Big Island of Hawaii, the Hurricane Center said. At its closest point, Lala's center was about 35 miles south off South Point, Hawaii, for about 3 hours. Although meteorologists said Lala did not officially make landfall in Hawaii, it was felt throughout the island chain. Flooding, mudslides, and hazardous surf remain concerns. Forecasters warned additional rainfall and saturated ground could prolong the dangers, and large swells generated by Lala were expected to fuel dangerous surf and rip current conditions. More than 3 feet of rain. Total rainfall over the islands has been extreme, the National Weather Service in Honolulu said late August 16th. The greatest rainfall numbers were along the windward side of the Big Island, where 20 to 40 inches of rain was reported, according to Patrick Blood of the Weather Service. The highest recorded total rainfall, 43.54 inches, occurred at Laupahoe on the island's northeast coast. Most of that was recorded between the afternoons of August 15th and 16th. Elsewhere, at least 10 to 15 inches were reported in Maui, 5 to 10 inches in Molokai, Lanai, and Oahu, and 10 to 15 inches in Kauai, the Weather Service said. Flood watches and power outages. By early August 17th, most of the rain had departed, but flood advisories remained active throughout the islands of Kauai, Niihau, Oahu, Lanai, Molokai, and Kaho'olawe, the weather said. More than 126,000 homes and businesses were without power early August 17th, according to Hawaiian Electric, the utility company serving much of the island's chain. More than 64,000 customers on Oahu, 41,000 on the Big Island, and almost 9,000 on Maui remained in the dark just after midnight, August 17th, the utility said. Customers on Hawaii Island are being asked to prepare for extended outages in the hardest hit rural areas of the island, the company said in a statement. Several main transmission lines were damaged on Hawaii Island, Maui, and Oahu. It noted some transmission lines cross remote terrain in mountainous areas, making repairs challenging and lengthy. The Hawaii official said August 16th that no storm-related deaths have been reported, and we pray that remains true.
And here's one more short article. A teen was killed and 4 were hurt in a shooting in Kentucky. The suspect was arrested in this Lexington Park incident. Authorities arrested an 18-year-old suspect accused of carrying out a mass shooting at a public park in Lexington, Kentucky that killed a teenager and then injured 4 others. Demetrius Griffin faces charges of murder, assault, and tampering with evidence in connection with the shooting August 15th, which was at Charles Young Park in Lexington. It was not immediately clear if Griffin had obtained legal representation. Attempts to reach him were not successful. The Lexington Police Department first responded just before 7 p.m. to a report of shots fired during summer festivities at this park. Authorities said a 4-year-old, a 14-year-old, and 2 adults were among those injured. A 5th person, later identified by the county coroner's office, was Dijon Robertson, and he was 16, and he died from a gunshot wound. USA Today defines a mass shooting as an incident in which at least 4 people are struck by gunfire, even if there are no fatalities. In a statement August 16th, Lexington Mayor Linda Gorton said the community would come together to pray for the wounded, for the young man we lost, and for his family and friends. We are more determined than ever to protect our young people and to help them turn away from violence, she said. Governor Andy Beshear mentioned the shooting in his speech for a Kentucky Democratic Party dinner on August the 15th at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Lexington. Let's think about the families of those that are involved. But having lost one of my closest friends in a shooting, let's just not live in fear, Beshear said. He was referring to a shooting at the Old National Bank in Louisville that was back in 2023, in which his friend Tommy Elliott had been killed. Charles Young Park had hosted the East End Day. It was a community event on August the 15th. Divine Kamara, director of One Lexington, said on Facebook that he was at the park at the time of the shooting. While trying to keep 4 young people covered and safe during shooting, a person 8 inches from me was shot tonight, he wrote. It's been 20 years since I've been that close to gunfire. And let me remind you, you're listening to a reading of articles from our USA Today for Tuesday, August the 18th, on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return to you for more readings just after this short break. And your readers again today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody.
and Alan Blackburn, and it's on to the sports section. In baseball news, the Brewers keeper gets a series win against Los Angeles. The Milwaukee Brewers won the Narrative World Series this weekend at Dodger Stadium. Wildly chided across the league for not landing Tarek Skubal at the trade deadline, the Brewers, in their first chance to face the left-handed ace wearing Dodger blue, beat him. And they did it with the pitcher they chose to hold on to over the Skubal splash. Right-hander Logan Henderson made another stride as a burgeoning frontline starter at all of 24 years old with his latest and perhaps greatest start. Facing the pitcher he was firmly involved in trade discussions with, the Tigers for two weeks ago, Henderson outdueled him with 7 innings of 3-hit, 1-run ball with 6 strikeouts on October 16th, as the Brewers picked up a series win at Dodger Stadium with a 6-2 decision. It was Henderson's 17th start at the big leagues and his 17th time holding the opponent to 3 or fewer runs. This is who he is, Brewers manager Pat Murphy said. He's just really consistent. It's not that he's not capable of a dud here and there, but he's just really consistent. He understands what he's doing. A hanging changeup to Max Muncy burned Henderson in the 4th inning, but proved to be his lone blemish of the game. At 66 pitches through 6 innings, and with his team nursing a 2-1 lead, it felt like a carbon copy of Henderson's first start on the road on August 10th. A tiring Henderson normally would have been out of that game after 6 innings, but was sent back for a 7th with the three top leverage arms available and ultimately allowed the game-deciding 2-run homer. This time, Henderson buckled down, working to strand a leadoff walk, and got through 7 for the first time in his professional career. Really happy to get through 7 today, he said. Left a bitter taste in my mouth the last outing. It was really good team win. This wasn't the most dominant you will see Henderson, who didn't get a single fastball whiff until the 6th and carried a hard hit rate of nearly 50%. But it was an example of what makes him so effective. He put together some unimpeachable sequences, especially early on. In Muncy's first at-bat with a man on first, Henderson had him well out in front of a changeup for strike 1, and then went back to it twice with 2 strikes to record the swinging strikeout. With Teoscar Hernandez leading off the 3rd, Henderson surprised him with a cutter up for a swinging strike 1, and then got an uncomfortable swing on the sweeper fouled off for strike 2. That was the first sweeper, a pitch he doesn't throw a ton, that Henderson threw all game. But he caught Hernandez completely off guard by doubling up on it for a strikeout. To cap the inning, Henderson got ahead 0-2 on Shohei Ohtani with the fastballs, showed him a changeup, and then went back to an elevated fastball away. Ohtani took it, but then flailed at a changeup down and away that tunneled perfectly off an earlier heater in the at-bat. His fastball sets up everything, Murphy said. The changeup was great, and to hold the Dodgers that lineup to 1 run in 7 innings was amazing. He was outstanding. Hats off to him. After running low on the fuel gauge in San Diego, Henderson had plenty of reserve this time around. Henderson hadn't recorded a single fastball whiff on 28 swings all day when he made most daring call of the start, challenging Ohtani on 1 over the plate. In the 3rd matchup, he blew it past him at 94.5 miles an hour, his fastest pitch of the day.
College football, don't sleep on these 10 to make a run at the playoff. Here are the Power 4 favorites this season. Number 1, Ohio State in the Big Ten. Number 3, Georgia in the SEC. Number 7, Miami in the ACC. And then number 12 is Texas Tech in the Big 12. These teams will be in the college football playoff, perhaps as the top 4 seeds. But here's a hint. Things in college football, they rarely follow the script. So sleeper teams are ready to pounce in every football bowl subdivision conference. While the preseason favorites lead the way now, here's some dark horse contenders who look to complicate the playoff picture. The first one they have is Big Ten, number 9, Washington. Number 2, Oregon, and number 6, Indiana don't qualify as dark horses behind the Buckeyes, since both are clearly capable of winning the national championship. Then they have the SEC, number 9, Oklahoma. The Sooners seem capable of climbing above Georgia and number 4, Texas to win the SEC after reaching the playoffs last season. Now the ACC, number 23, Clemson. Clemson qualifies as an ACC dark horse behind Miami, number 20 SMU, and maybe even unranked Louisville, speaks to the program's steady drop from the ranks of the Power Four's most consistently powerful programs. Then they have the Big 12, Arizona State. Texas Tech is the overwhelming favorite, even without Brendan Sorsby, just behind our number 15 BYU, number 21 Utah, and 24 Houston. Admittedly, picking Arizona State, it's a gamble. The Sun Devils look much different from last season and will be very reliant on one of the league's top transfer classes. Then American, East Carolina, a strong portal class. Maybe you're seeing a theme here, and a very favorable schedule have ECU lurking in the AAC race despite bringing back just 3 primary starters. Conference USA, Delaware. Delaware's offense is dynamic enough to overcome a defense that needs to prove it can get off the field on the third down and limit the explosive plays. In the end, the issues on defense will make it hard to leap ahead of favorites such as Western Kentucky. Mid-American, Central Michigan. We know it won't be the UMass, the only winless team in the FBS last season. On paper, Central Michigan might not stack up evenly with preseason MAC faves, Western Michigan and Miami, especially with some lingering question marks about the health of its passing game. But the Chippewas made notable gains in Coach Matt Dinkall's first season and draw the Broncos and Redhawks at home. Mountain West, North Dakota State. Ignore the fact that North Dakota State created one of the great dynasties in NCAA history on the football championship subdivision level before moving up to the bowl subdivision this summer. The Bison are still FBS neophytes who will be tested by a tougher and more physically demanding schedule. Are they ready for the test? Pac-12, Washington State. Boise State is about as big a favorite as you'll find in any FBS conference, followed by San Diego State and Fresno State in the new Pac-12. The third Washington State coach in as many years, Kirby Moore, will be challenged by the constant roster turnover during these coaching moves. But the Cougars are another dark horse contender who reloaded with transfer help and have several interesting pieces. And finally, the Sun Belt, Marshall. James Madison remains the team to beat in the East Division, and Troy in the West. Marshall didn't receive a first-place vote in the preseason media poll, but did earn the most preseason all-conference selections, including the Sun Belt's projected Offensive Player of the Year and quarterback Carlos Del Rio Wilson, and another 4 offensive players who earned a first-team slot. After a 5-7 debut, second-year coach Tony Gibson has to show that he's learned from an uneven 2025.
A 3-deep supporting cast? Drew Allar and Will Howard applied pressure for the Pittsburgh Steelers to keep 4 quarterbacks. Carrying 4 quarterbacks on a 53-man regular season roster is exceptionally rare in the modern NFL. Most of the examples of it happening include paperwork tricks and versatile signal callers like Taysom Hill during his New Orleans Saints days. For the sake of maintaining depth at every other position, the formula is clear. 1 starter, 1 backup, 1 third stringer who spends most weeks either inactive or dipping down to the practice squad. The Steelers may be the next exception to the rule as they juggle their present interests in winning with their future interests in finding the next franchise guy. Even a diminished Aaron Rodgers showed last season that he's the best available option for General Manager Omar Khan and Coach Mike McCarthy in the here and now. He's arguably the best pure passer in NFL history, and his knowledge of where the ball needs to go was the boost the Steelers needed to win the AFC North in underdog fashion. Even the physical ability to get there isn't quite what it was in his prime. Mason Rudolph has likewise identified himself as the proven backup every team that fancies itself a contender needs. Although the Steelers have never seen fit to give him the starting job too long term, despite frequent opportunities to do so since he was drafted in 2018, he's won games when the Steelers needed him to. In 2023, he rallied together 3 victories to close the season, salvaging a playoff berth that otherwise might have been lost due to injuries and ineffectiveness from Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. Then last season, he closed out a win that Rodgers couldn't finish the second half due to an injury, and he kept the Steelers in the subsequent game at Chicago. Will Howard and Drew Allar haven't proved that kind of competence yet. Both were lottery ticket-type NFL draft picks the last couple of years. LR was selected in the third round this past April, while Howard got his call in the sixth round in 2025. Those types get roster churned through all the time in the NFL. They're not the first-round guys who make the break front office regimes. And yet there are good reasons for the Steelers to want to hold on to both of them, at least long enough to have proper quarterback competition come this time next year, especially after both showed out in their respective NFL debuts August 13th against the Green Bay Packers. Howard is a proven winner with the college football playoff national championship under his belt at Ohio State. He's got size that cause many fans to compare him to Ben Roethlisberger at 6'4", 236 pounds, and there's an edge to his game that's attractive. The Downingtown, Pennsylvania product famously called out Penn State for not recruiting him to college before taking the Nittany Lions down in Beaver Stadium as a Buckeye. The persistent knock has been his arm strength and ability to make NFL throws. LR was the opposing quarterback that day and fittingly has the opposite reputation. His arm is probably the best on the team. For a larger guy, he can move like Buffalo Bills star Josh Allen. He has, however, consistently come up short in the big moments. In 3 years as Penn State starter, he failed to beat the Big Ten big dogs like Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan over half a dozen opportunities. And his interception at the college football playoff semifinal against Notre Dame has been a microcosm of his perceived inability to process defenses and coverages. August 13th against the Packers, LR grabbed the headlines by totaling 3 total touchdowns and averaging nearly 12 yards per attempt. Howard got a little lost in that spotlight, but still delivered a touchdown drive in the 2-minute drill right before halftime. It's very reflective of Coach McCarthy and his play calling and his system, Howard said of the quarterback's success after the game. How it's tailored to be friendly for the quarterback. I think it also speaks to Coach Tom Arth and Coach Brian Angelico, everybody in that room, and Rodgers helping us out. How could you not want to see those guys go toe-to-toe for the top job with another year of development under McCarthy, who shepherded Rodgers through many of his best years and got a lot out of Dak Prescott with the Dallas Cowboys. It's a collision of circumstances where most NFL franchises would probably choose one direction or the other. Go for broke to give Rodgers a John Elway-type inning with Rudolph in tow, or turn the reins over to young guys for better or for worse. The Steelers aren't most NFL franchises. They consider themselves an annual contender, one that's won 6 Super Bowls by constantly finding the right balance of present and future. And the mindset is, admittedly, a tad haughty, and one could argue that kind of navel-gazing is the reason this franchise has now spent 8 seasons in the wilderness without a playoff win, despite always being in the playoff mix. Still, the roles in this quarterback room are distinct enough that it doesn't feel like the mess you normally associate with having 4 guys. Think Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, and Deshaun Watson in Cleveland last year. Perhaps that's a good enough reason to keep all of them for as long as you can. A year is a long time to wait, and anything could happen once the games start to count. If the Steelers are good enough to win a playoff game, maybe someone needs to be cut loose to make room for a linebacker or cornerback. If they're bad, maybe Rodgers calls it a career early, or Rudolph becomes expendable as a necessary luxury. Maybe they'll be so bad they'll position themselves to draft a different quarterback early in the pecking order. In the meantime, you don't have to squint to see potential benefits of doing something unorthodox come roster cutdown day in a few weeks.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:13. We're continuing with sports. We're going to talk golf. St. Jude is the latest Scheffler stroll. Scotty Scheffler enjoyed a walk in the park in Memphis on Sunday. The world number 1 ended his victory drought in a convincing fashion August the 16th, shooting 4 under 66 at TPC Southwind and winning the FedEx St. Jude Championship by 8 over Si Woo Kim. I wanted to win so bad, but Scotty played so good, Kim said. Did he ever? It's almost laughable to say Scheffler's victory snapped a drought of hoisting trophies on the PGA Tour, but his previous longest stretch between first and second victories had been 28 days. Now, Scheffler captured the American Express in January and then had gone 203 days since chasing victory. That included 5 runner-up finishes during that stretch, tied for the most in the last 40 years on the PGA Tour with 6 other players. Scheffler, who is 30, notched his 21st tour title, matching matching the career win total of the likes of World Golf Hall of Famer members Davis Love III and Lanny Wadkins, and then became the third youngest to do so behind Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus. On a day when the temps approached 100 degrees and felt even hotter, he got off to a sluggish start with a bogey at the par 5 third hole after his greenside bunker shot splashed out, hit a sprinkler head, took a big bounce, and rolled into a water hazard. Before taking his penalty drop, he said to his caddy, Ted Scott, "When is this going to stop happening?" "I don't know, man," said Scott. But Scheffler refused to let it stop his return to the winner's circle. He bounced back with a birdie at 5th, and then the golf gods evened the score at number 6 when he pulled his tee shot left and got a fortuitous bounce to be the first cut of the rough. He took advantage, making a birdie to extend his lead. Scheffler made a driver switch this past week that could stick and displayed his usual ball striking excellence, ranking 3rd in strokes gained, tee to green, and 2nd in SG, approach in the field for the week. But it was his putter that was the story of the week. He ranked 1st in strokes gained, putting for the week, the best performance of his career in that category, and when he does that, it's not a fair fight. He birdied the first 5 holes on Friday en route to 9 under 61, which included 2 bogeys, and poured in putts of 20 feet at the number 11, 21 feet at the number 13, and the route was on. He added another birdie at 16 to solidify his winning total of 17 under 263. Now, as a measure of his dominance, Scheffler was the only player to finish in double digits for the week. Scheffler made his pro debut in Memphis back in 2018, where he finished tied under 4 under and tied at 3 under with the previous 2 years at the TPC Southwind. The win, that means Scheffler owns multiple victories in each of his 5 seasons on tour and marked his 11th straight win when holding the outright 54-hole lead. Now, it should help Scheffler make a case for being a Tour's Player of the Year, an honor that he has been chasing for the 5th straight time. Scheffler banked $3.6 million to improve to number 2 on the Tour's career money list, passing Rory McIlroy, who finished 66. Scheffler is now just $1,034,755 behind Woods. "I felt like a week like this was coming," he said. "I felt like I was on repeat all year, just like being, hey, I'm playing solid, I'm close. It feels good to be answering some different questions now at the end of the week."
In IndyCar racing news, Ericsson wins the first Markham race after a brush-up. Andretti Global's day at IndyCar's Ontario Honda dealers Indy at Markham almost ended in agony. After Kyle Kirkwood wrecked out of the 90-lap race on lap 54, Will Power and Marcus Ericsson stayed toward the front of the pack. But as Ericsson tried to overtake Power for 3rd place on the lap 82, the teammates made contact in the tricky turn 5 hairpin of the new street circuit. Both cars lost pace while chasing Alex Palou, and Ericsson was dangerously close to hitting the wall before passing Power on the inside. Power didn't realize his teammate was making that move, and he planned to let Ericsson, who had fresh tires and more fuel, pass him on the upcoming straightaway. It was a miscommunication because the team came on and said, "Marcus is really quick, he's coming," Power said after the race. "I said, okay, tell him I'll let him go on the back straight so I can stay close to Palou. He didn't get the message, or it wasn't quick enough for him. Yeah, miscommunication. I didn't even look in my mirror, I just turned." Ericsson acknowledged that the mistake was on his end, not Power's. "I was really eager to get by and sort of hunt down the leaders because I really felt like I had the pace to win at that point," Ericsson said. "It's all good. We talked about it. We touched, but we are all square and we're side by side. There's no hard feelings." Despite the error that could have led to none of Andretti Global's 3 cars finishing the race, Ericsson and Power came away from it clean. Both drivers got by Palou, and Ericsson passed the then leader Roman Grosjean on turn 6 of the 12-turn course on lap 86. Ericsson never surrendered that lead to come away victorious in a chaotic 6-caution race. The win was Ericsson's first in 3 sessions with Andretti Global. The 35-year-old Swedish driver signed an extension to return to the team August 6th and rewarded them 10 days later. After finishing 15th in IndyCar Championship in 2024 and 20th in 2025, Ericsson sits 9th this year with 4 races to go. He'd be near the top five for not for mechanical failures at Long Beach and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Since the season began, Ericsson has returned to driving like the guy who won the 2022 Indianapolis 500 and 3 other races for Chip Ganassi Racing from 2020 to 2023. I didn't recognize myself in the last year, Eric said, after winning the pole for the Grand Prix of Arlington when he finished 4th. I didn't drive with confidence. I didn't drive aggressive. I was just not myself. I've worked really hard to be back at the level I know I can be at. Ericsson spent the offseason regaining the confidence that made Andretti Global want to prime away from CGR in the first place. He raced a GT3 sports car last December with his younger brother Hampus in Malaysia before returning to a sports car for IMSA's 24 Hours of Daytona in January. He spent more time in Andretti Global's shop to grow comfortable with the team that has gone through personnel changes since Michael Andretti sold a majority stake to TWG Motorsports following the 2024 season. The diligence that Ericsson and Andretti Global have gone through to make this partnership work is coming to fruition. 6 months ago, it wasn't clear if Ericsson would be on this team in 2027, but his performance, even before Markin, made re-signing an obvious choice. You can't, after a season like last year, sit around and think hopefully next year will be better, Ericsson said. You have to put in hours with the team, with the personnel, with yourself. That's what I really did over the winter, and that's been paying off. Andretti Global's 3 drivers have developed a chemistry that made continuity for 2027 a goal of its leadership. Spearheaded by TWG Motorsports CEO Dan Torres, Andretti Global President Jill Gregory, and the team principal Ron Rzuski. Rzuski, who spent 20 years at Team Penske before being fired last May amid the team's Indy 500 cheating scandal, doubles as a strategist for Power. While both drivers were battling to get by Palou and Grosjean, Rzuski said there was no objection to letting Ericsson pass Power. I think the timing stands are working well together, Rzuski said. There's no egos right now. It's working really well. After Kirkwood won at Arlington, Andretti Global joins Arrow, McLean, Paddy O'Ward, and Christian Lundegaard as the only teams that have multiple drivers in to win a race this year. Andretti Global is the last team to win an IndyCar championship besides CGR and Team Penske, which it did in 2012 with Ryan Hunter Ray. And as Palou has extended his championship lead to 133 points over Kirkwood, CGR appears to have another on the way, but Rzuski feels Andretti Global could close the gap next year with another season of this driver trio. My experiences for Andretti was all about continuity, Rzuski said. I learned a lot of lessons from that, trying to bring that here. Now it's just trying to give everybody a little bump, a little bit of a nudge to really take everything to the next level. I think we're in a good spot going into the rest of the season. Looking forward to 27.
And Larson wins dirt race post NASCAR Mad Dash. As it turns out, Kyle Larson is fast on paved asphalt tracks, fast on dirt, fast on his feet, and fast through the air. After crossing the finish line 6th in the Cookout 400 on Saturday night, August 15th at Richmond Raceway, the reigning NASCAR Cup Series champion quickly unbuckled from his safety harness, hopped out of his number 5 Chevy, and bolted towards his Hendrick Motorsports hauler. By the time the reporters got to the garage, he was already on his way to the airport, getting ready to fly to Iowa for the Knoxville Nationals, arguably the most prestigious competition in all of dirt racing. NASCAR's race at Richmond ended at around 10:16 p.m. Then, 4 hours later, Larson was standing atop his number 57 sprint car in the victory lane in Knoxville, Iowa, smiling and waving the checkered flag as fireworks went off. Larson, who has twice attempted the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 double, pulled off an incredible and improbable feat by notching a top 10 win at Richmond and then winning at the Knoxville Nationals for the 4th time. I'm just wild now I'm here tonight, he said. Huge thank you to everyone at Hendrick Motorsports. A 4th Knoxville Nationals is a fashion like this is unbelievable. Larson had initially resigned himself to not being able to make it to Iowa. The 34-year-old careers in NASCAR's Cup Series has always come before his side expeditions in dirt racing, and it looked like the schedules weren't going to align. But the folks at Hendrick Motorsports saw the forecast for the Knoxville Nationals and put a plan in place. Mother Nature then played her part and dumped rain on the track, delaying the start of the race for about 4 hours. Hendrick Motorsports president Jeff Andrews was very instrumental in helping us get a plan laid out, Larson's NASCAR crew chief Cliff McDaniel said. I'd much rather have a plan in place that we can say no to than to just have nothing prepared. We were persistent because we knew that if we could get him there, he probably would do something special. With 114 laps to go at Richmond and Larson running 14th, Daniels buzzed into Larson's in-car radio. Knoxville hasn't even started hot laps yet. Big delay for the race. Don't know if it's tomorrow yet. They're way behind. Just so you know. And a surprised Larson said, Knoxville? Yeah, we're working on a plan, said Daniels. After completing 400 laps at Richmond, where he notched a much-needed top 10 result, his first since June 28th at Sonoma, he then caught a ride to the Richmond airport and flew into Pella Municipal Airport. At one point late Saturday, his jet was the most tracked flight on the site Flight Radar, with more than 16,000 people viewing. Larson landed and got a police escort to the track, with time to spare before the start of the race, where he was the pole sitter. Larson led all 50 laps to win his 16th race at Knoxville and a $200,000 prize. Another former NASCAR driver, Casey Kane, placed in third. It's extremely surreal, he said after the victory. It just means a lot that they love dirt racing as much as I do, and they supported everybody at Hendrick Motorsports to allow me to do this while they're paying me a lot of money to race NASCAR for a living and to try to produce results for them and win championships. Well, it's pretty amazing. Dirt racing is where Larson began his whole career in motorsports, beginning at the age of 7 in his native California. His children, they are racing on dirt now too. With 2 races left until NASCAR's postseason chase begins, Larson is 8th in the points standing after a strong finish at Richmond.
Roberts calls out the Dodgers among recent struggles. The Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team remain one of the favorites to win the World Series. That doesn't mean it will come easy. Manager Dave Roberts called out his team both offensively and defensively on August 16th, after the Dodgers lost 3 of 4 games to the Milwaukee Brewers in the series at Dodger Stadium. I say this because it's just been 4 or 5, 6 weeks of below average production in our offense, he said. It's just the truth. And I think we just haven't played clean baseball for quite some time, and that speaks to the defense. When asked which was more concerning, Roberts pointed at both. I think both, Roberts said. Giving extra outs, which causes pitchers and the guys who are working with the defense and their at-bats. But I still think there's a certain intent offensively. But they both need to get to better. The Dodgers have lost 10 of their last 15 games, including a 7-game losing streak from July 31st to August 7th, and would have gone 13-14, and have gone 13-14 since the All-Star break. Roberts admits he didn't have a single answer as what will break the team out of this funk, but continued to cite the team's experience as a reason for this to be seen as nothing more than a phase and not a snapshot of what this team is going forward. During that 7-game losing streak, the Dodgers were swept by the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs. That's just not winning baseball, Roberts said. Our pedigree and what we typically do is control the zone, grind it out at-bats, and create stress. We just aren't doing that. Los Angeles even acquired Tarek Skubal during that losing streak, and he hasn't been able to turn things around for the team. He's 0-1 after the last 3 starts for the Dodgers. The Dodgers appear to have turned things around this past week, sweeping the Kansas City Royals at home in a 3-game series, but that was quickly derailed. The Brewers came to town and won 3 out of 4 games, outscoring the Dodgers 16-10. In the last 2 games against Milwaukee, the Dodgers' offense was held to 3 runs on 11 hits and 3 walks. I like to think they're all aware of it, Roberts told reporters. They've done it in the past. We just need to reset offensively. And it just can't happen all at once. You have to start building collectively.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our time is 1:29, and it's time to switch over to the lifestyle section. And we're going to start with some music, news, and views. Fearless, introspective Simon rides the waves. Anyone who thinks Carly Simon will tiptoe away from her career need only to listening to the opening track of Comes in Waves. Now, that's her first album of original songs in 18 years. Over a jaunty piano melody, she bulldozes into a chorus of howl with the demand to howl like the wind, roar like the river, wail like the rain, cry and shout and shiver. The layered string-based instrumentation couches the defiance of her words in the song's gripping bridge, where he swore he'd never leave you, burn his promise and leave that liar. Her fortitude is undiminished. The famously private Simon, who is now 83, recently disclosed that she's been living with Parkinson's disease and underwent some cancer surgery for basal cell carcinoma. Simon's gift for poetic grace is undiminished at age 83. While her famous ex-husband, James Taylor, is the obvious target of the song Maybe I Never Loved You, a brilliant seesaw of bile and indifference, and the similarly themed The More I Look for You, it is Simon's delivery that matters the most in her songs. The slight hesitation in her last reading of Maybe I Never Loved You, Maybe I Always Will turns the song's intention inside out, or does it? That's the beauty of singers like Simon, a diminishing breed who understands that phrasing and conveyance often lend the necessary ambiguity for listeners to just find their own meaning in the song. Other songs, such as Mother of Pearl, it's a gorgeous ode to her own daughter Sally, and it's more direct. Apologies, I can see you at 7, a child of divorce, how it can be that we gave you no choice. And declarations of devotion, you purl and you quarrel with the noisy parade, and then you stay. They are stacked with personal details that shimmer in Simon's poetic grace. But it's hard to miss the clutch of emotion that catches in her throat as she unleashes the soulful torrent of My Girl, Oh My Girl, as that song reaches its apex. Simon pays tribute to an old friend. Through introspection is Simon's default setting, the sly wit that has shaded so much of her stellar catalog since 1971. Looking at You Again, You're So Vain is also apparent. 4 in the Morning, written by her close friend, the late Judy Belushi, now that was the widow of comedian John Belushi, finally gets a recorded remembrance. Bells, keyboards, and weird little things, as noted on the album's liner notes, inject the song with whimsical flourishes, while Judy Belushi's vocals are nestled throughout. Now, Simon ends this striking Sticks With You album with Do It Anyway, a buoyant flash of hopefulness and a simple call to action. If you think you can't face the day, if you're sure you can't win the game, if you swear you can't find a way, well, do it anyway. Sounds of her family clapping and scatting over a strummed acoustic guitar, the usual Thanksgiving fun as described in the album notes. They edge in as the song fades, a twirl of unprompted joy and the laughing of a lingering memory.
Nashville actress Panettiere dies at age 36. Hayden Panettiere, the former child actress, best known for her roles in TV series like Heroes in Nashville, has died at 36. Her representative confirmed her death on Sunday, August 16th. TMZ was the first to share the news. It is with profound sadness that we share the tragic passing of our beloved Hayden. She was an incredible light and a force of nature who brought immeasurable love and joy to all who knew her, and to the millions who watched her on screen, her father Skip Panettiere said in a statement. He asked for privacy as our family takes time to process this unimaginable loss. Panettiere, whose long and prolific career in TV and film began when she was a baby, and has been vocal in recent years about her troubles with addiction and the effects of childhood stardom. Here's a picture of her in the world premiere of Scream 4 in New York City in 2023. The cause of death has not yet been shared. On August 16th, about 1:51 p.m., police officers and emergency medical personnel responded to a call from an acquaintance of Panettiere's reporting an unresponsive woman at an apartment complex in Greenville, South Carolina. Upon arrival, medical assistance was administered, but the woman, later identified as Panettiere, was pronounced dead, according to police. They added that no foul play is suspected. The Greenville Police Department and the Greenville County Coroner's Office are investigating. A young blonde star with plenty of on-screen spunk, Panettiere held her own against top stars in her early career, starring opposite Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans and Callista Flockhart in Ally McBeal. Those early career moments also included roles in the soap opera One Life to Live, the crime procedural Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and the animated film A Bug's Life. Her roles in Disney's Tiger Cruise as the teen military child Maddie Dolan and as rival ice skater Jennifer Glenn Harwood in 2005's Ice Princess brought her to the masses. Palantir's death comes more than a year after the loss of her Ice Princess co-star Michelle Trachtenberg, who died at age 39 in February 2025. New York City's Office Chief Medic Examiner declared the cause of Madame Trachtenberg's death as complications of diabetes mellitus. Palantir's breakout starring role came as the cheerleader Claire Bennett on NBC's teen superhero drama Heroes, and later as a country pop singer in more than 100 episodes of Nashville. She starred as Kirby Reed in the Scream slasher film franchise, appearing in 2011's Scream 4, and 2022's Scream, and 2023's Scream 6. She also starred in the films Bring It On, All or Nothing, I Love You, Beth Cooper, and Raising Helen. In her candid memoir released this year, This Is Me, A Reckoning, Palantir chronicled childhood fame, laying bare her crosses with nefarious actors in her teens and addiction as an adult. In interviews about the memoir, Palantir reflected she was groomed to be a little soldier throughout her early career. Grown-ups gave me a positive attention when as an actor I failed, got sick, screamed and cried, killed, grieved and suffered. Reality merged with my imagination, burned into my core memories, where all my shame and trauma lives, Palantir wrote in her memoir. I've often wondered whether, unintentionally, I brought on my traumas because I'm wired to think they're good for me. Born August 21st, 1989, Palantir was raised in Palisades, New York, by former soap actress Leslie Vogel and Alan Lee Skip Palantir, a former captain with the New York City Fire Department. She began appearing in television commercials before she turned 1 and spent the rest of her life in front of the camera. She was one of the youngest Grammy nominees, earning a nomination for the Best Spoken Word Album for Children for A Bug's Life read-along. She also earned nominations for the Golden Globe Awards, Young Artist Awards, People's Choice Awards, and Critics' Choice Television Awards, winning the Teen Choice Award in 2007 for Choice TV Actress in a Drama for Heroes. When she was a teen, Palantir's team gave her happy pills, an amphetamine, Palantir believed, before her interviews, and red carpets to help her focus. Palantir wrote in her memoir that this habit would forever change her world. At 16, they were the gateway drug that ushered me toward the good of pharmaceuticals and the downfall of addiction, she wrote. Elsewhere, the actress wrote that her turn on Nashville often reflected the real-life confusion that she felt. Juliette Barnes had a postpartum depression and an alcohol pill problem and a divorce on the horizon. She was erratic, an absentee mother, and fought with everyone, including her fans. Every time I read the day's script, it was like I was looking in a funhouse mirror, not seeing a distorted reflection of myself, and I can't tell you how less this made me feel, she wrote. Her substance misuse was not only the struggle the Palantir family has experienced. Palantir wrote in her book that her brother, Jansen, was smoking crack and snorting heroin before he died in 2023 at age 28.
And now we're going to talk about movies. McConaughey enjoys the sting of his rival's role. Well, it's a cruel irony to be getting cast as a beekeeper only to discover that you're severely allergic. That happened to Matthew McConaughey as he was about to start filming The Rivals of Amziah King, that's in theaters, a music-driven thriller about a mischievous Oklahoma man, that's McConaughey, who teaches his former foster daughter, that's Angelina Lookingglass, about the shockingly cutthroat honey business. The good news is, if you're going to find out you're allergic to bee stings, well, it's best to happen 5 days before production, which is when I got stung, he said. As he was driving home that day, I started noticing my peripheral vision is getting less and less, and I'm like, well, something's in my eye. I pulled down the little vanity mirror, and the whole left side of my face was swollen shut, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm allergic. Now, while most actors might demand using a stunt double or computer-generated imagery insects, McConaughey McConaughey just took that injury in stride. The scene where I'm holding the queen bee and tens of thousands of bees are swarming around me, well, we moved that to the last scene just in case I got bit, he said. So now he chats with USA Today about Willie Nelson, his most underrated movies, and now what's in his fridge. Here's the question. If we suddenly discover a bee's nest in the corner of the room, would you be running for the door along with all of us? His answer, I wouldn't be running for the door. I have learned that they're actually like dogs that way. They love to chase you if you run. Part of getting along with bees is you need to remain calm, he said. Now, there's an incredible sequence where Mziah breaks down all the staples of a great potluck dinner. What are the must-haves at the McConaughey table? Here's the answer. I'm a little more informal, but my wife Camilla is very good at putting together a meal that is fully proper. What we can do that nobody else is going to get anywhere else is stroganoff, which is a Brazilian dish, or a brigadeiro, that's a chocolate truffle-like sweet for dessert. And I'm pretty good on the grill, he said. Mziah says there's truth and lies in everything. What's your story about your tuna salad? Here's the answer. The tuna salad is the truth because it comes from a ritual on Sunday. Now, in Brazil, they call it mexadeo, which is you clean out everything in the fridge, everything before it goes bad, and then you use the last of any kind of leftovers to just make a dish. My tuna fish salad, that's kind of reminiscent of that. You also learned to play the mandolin for this movie. Would you ever get noise complaints, or is that just when you play your bongos? Well, that's the bongos with a particular neighbor who no longer lives there. I think they got booted out from the neighborhood. No, where I happened to be, we were playing loud, and no one could even hear it. Or maybe they liked it. Question. You're quite an accomplished musician, and you're also good friends with Willie Nelson. What's one of your favorite memories of hanging out with Willie? Here's his answer. The first time I was on his bus, and you know what happens on his bus, I was hosting. So I've got all my steaks marinated. I'm going to be cooking on the grill. I get on his bus and partake of what you partake of when you're on Willie's bus, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, the steaks are burning. So I jet off the bus, run over to the grill. I hadn't even lit it yet. The subplot becomes unimaginable. Yeah, that's a good Willie story, he says. You've made all kinds of movies, big and small, many of which are widely beloved. But what's something that deserves a second look? Maybe it didn't get a fair shake from the critics or the audiences. Well, I've had quite a few that found a higher gear later on. I mean, like Dazed and Confused was not a hit when it first came out, but it's a cult classic now. Sahara seemed to have a good afterlife. It didn't do well in our opening, but it did make a second one. Interstellar did well, but boy, the 10-year anniversary was like a brand new release for that movie. The Rivals of Mziah King were an independent film, and independent films don't come out on a massive amount of screens. Is it a movie worth seeing? I believe it damn sure is. I just hope it finds all the right people. Question. I've seen Serenity a few times now, and I believe you and Anne Hathaway are exactly locked into the tone of what the film needs to be. He says, I think so too. I enjoyed making that movie. Anne and I have worked together a few times, and I think we're pretty good at locking in and not trespassing on each other's energy. Now, speaking of Interstellar, have you seen The Odyssey yet? And he says, no, I've been out of the country. I just got back from Italy, and as soon as I got back, boom, we hit the trail promoting. So I'm looking forward to this weekend. My son and I are going to go see it at the IMAX. And last question. Have you ever reached out to Christopher Nolan about working together, like, hey, where was my role in Oppenheimer or The Odyssey? His answer is, not directly. We both enjoy the prospect of working together again on the right thing. Part of why he's really good at what he does is he has a singular obsession with each film, and it's in its own universe. He said the film that made him come to me for Interstellar was Mud. And I'm not going to throw that in the categories of the ones that no one's seen. I think that it got its head above the waterline. But as far as Nolan goes, it would be fun to be strapping on the boots again and going to work. It's a full commitment to work with him, and no one is more committed.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:44. And here's a story about streaming. Disney goes back to Camp Rock for a third encore. Strangers will stop Maria Canals Barrera, who starred in Camp Rock and Wizards of Waverly Place on the street, and call her my TV mom in my childhood. She played the selfless, no-nonsense mom to Demi Lovato's Mitchie in the Camp Rock movies, and says some of her favorite moments from the franchise were off camera, running to the laundromat with Lovato's mom or listening to Lovato's rehearsed lyrics in her room. She calls the happenstance encounters a gift, and she says she's still grappling with watching on her on-screen counterparts, Lovato and the Jonas Brothers, grow up. It really did feel like 15 years had not gone by, but of course everybody's in their 30s now. Canals Barrera, who has 2 daughters, said with the Joe Brothers, Joe Bros, they're all dads, they all have daughters, and so I go, you know what it's like. Camp Rock 3, streaming now on Disney Plus, passes the mic to the new generation of campers. When Connect 3, played by Nick, Joe, and Kevin Jonas, return in search of an opener for their tour, the new campers, including stars Layamani Segura and Malachi Barton, vie for the coveted spot. The 2026 sequel plays into the franchise's success using revamped throwbacks such as Play by My Music, tabletop dance numbers, and the all too familiar lines, "Whatever, Major Loser is back." And Lovato and the Jonas Brothers also executive produced and star in the musical movie. As Camp Rock 3 wrangles in familiar faces and catchy singles, fans and Camp Rock alums debate whom the sequel is for and whether it will resonate with audiences. Camp Rock, the 2008 project that helped turn Joe Lovato and the Jonas Brothers into Disney royalty, averaged 8.9 million viewers on the day of its release. It became one of the most watched Disney Channel original movies, and its soundtrack charted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 list. Camp Rock broke containment, becoming a phenomenon among tweens and parents, said Ashley Spencer, the author of Disney High, the untold story of the rise and fall of Disney Channel's tween empire. They were covering magazines. They were in the tabloids, Spencer tells USA Today. So that was something that Disney and the Disney Channel could only dream about manufacturing, an original concept that becomes huge today. Disney has since released an arsenal of reboots with such shows as Raven's Home, which ran for 6 seasons, High School Musical, the series, which ran for 4 seasons, and Wizards Beyond Waverly Place, in which Canals Barrera reprises her role, which ran for 3 seasons, wrapping this month. Despite their success, Spencer argues the brand's reach has changed. They're no longer even targeting the same tweens that they were in the 2000s, she said. They're going for the 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds that are very young. So the content is staying very young, and they're capitalizing on nostalgia by bringing those actors and characters to hook their parents or single adults who want to tune in. But it's not hitting because it's not for you anymore. Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and Cartoon Network once had a stronghold on youth's attention, but in recent years, streaming platforms, particularly YouTube, have fractured targeted audiences. Spencer believes one way to draw older target markets is by following the protagonists as they age, such as the canceled Lizzie McGuire reboot that centered around her life in her 30s. You're really leaning into that nostalgia and that goodwill that you've garnered with the Generation Z and Millennials, Spencer says. But are they going to feel passionate about this new product? Probably not in the same way. Micah Sanders, who's 26, makes fan edits of Disney Channel shows and movies on his social media pages and says he has watched Camp Rock and Camp Rock 2, The Final Jam, more than 10 times. Following its release, he bought a Shane Gray doll. It was drawn by the uplifting message of earworms such as This Is Me. Sanders now says he's now rooting for the sequel and its new cast. Disney Plus and Disney Channel in general are doing a good job of building on that nostalgia and creating new content for new generation, but also trying to obviously get the good graces from the older generation as well, Sanders said. Camp Rock alum Roshan, who played a camper and a rapper, adds that it'll be hard to replicate Lovato's signature sound or the tween sweat and tears that made the TV movie a hit. We had all of these talented people that worked and meshed together all in one place, Roshan said.
And Epstein victim's brother carries the fight. Sky Roberts relaunches Geoffrey's nonprofit group. There was a time, Sky Roberts says, when he thought he would be celebrating his big sister's August 9th birthday with her, margaritas in their hands and sharing stories of parties with their cousins. But instead, he will mark the day honoring Virginia Roberts Giuffre's advocacy of victims of sex trafficking and continuing her work. Now, he is relaunching his sister's nonprofit SOAR, that's SOAR, that stands for Speak Out Act Reclaim, SOAR, to support victims of sex trafficking, abuse, and domestic violence. Roberts Giuffre, a key accuser of the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, died by suicide at age of 41 back in April of 25. Now, in many ways, he's just making his role official. He has already spent the past year working for justice for Roberts Giuffre and other victims. Roberts met with dozens of women who also say Epstein sexually abused and trafficked them. He stood at the U.S. Capitol to support the Epstein's Transparency Act, and he demonstrated outside Zorro Ranch in New Mexico to push for the release of unredacted documents in the Epstein files. He has told his sister's story again and again, how she accused Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former prince, of sexually abusing her at the age of 17 when she was trafficked by Epstein. And then how she later built a beautiful life with 3 children. It's fitting to launch it again on her birthday. She always wanted to bring joy and happiness to women as she helped them, he says in a video. He was in the corner, that's tucked in the corner of his home that he shares with his wife. Stenciled letters spell out justice on a wood sign behind him in the video. It came from one of the Zorro Ranch demonstrators. I always knew I'd work for a nonprofit, but I didn't expect it would be without her. Now he wants the organization to be a resource hub for survivors, something that his sister never even had. Now SOAR is relying on donations to help women, including an emergency fund to help victims of Epstein. The late Queen Elizabeth's contribution to SOAR might soon help. The former prince, her second son, settled a civil suit with Roberts Giuffre in 2022 for an undisclosed amount. He said he would make a substantial donation in support of victims' rights to her organization, but he did not admit any wrongdoing. Now, SOAR was recently registered as a nonprofit. A representation of the group won't comment on how much money is in the fund. Roberts Giuffre began trying to start the organization way back in 2014 to help survivors of abuse, the opposite of what Epstein had done, she wrote in her memoir that was called Nobody's Girl. Her last attempt was in August of 21, but it struggled as she battled lawsuits, wrote her memoir, and then suffered from mental and physical health issues. We didn't want to let this die with her, Roberts says, so he is leading SOAR with his wife and his family friend and their publicist, Deanie Von Muffling. Now, Roberts says he won't give up on his sister's work. While SOAR isn't a political organization, he and his wife will continue to lobby for Virginia's law, which would remove the federal statute of limitations on sex abuse cases and push for release of all the Epstein documents. Pushing for transparency and justice for victims can be discouraging as files continue to be released with the victims' names, but often without those of the accused. Acting U.S. Attorney Todd Blanche, who has been criticized by Epstein victims over the way the Department of Justice handled the files, he moved one step closer to confirmation on August the 7th. Lawmakers introduced a bill August 5th to allow state attorneys general and survivors to sue the U.S. Attorney General and demand transparency in the files. So that's when Roberts draws inspiration from his sister's journal, her voice. He thumbs through years of her handwritten ideas and notes. You sit alone with yourself and you say, am I doing the right thing? Would she be proud? Would she be smiling down? Well, the journals give us that, he says. She wanted other survivors to know that it's hard and they think there is no way they can be happy, but they can survive.
Here's the Lifeline column. Teddy Mellencamp is making waves. Teddy Mellencamp's new boyfriend, previously known as Valley Guy, isn't such a mystery anymore. The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills alumna, who's 45 years old, revealed she's dating PJ Conley with an Instagram official post sharing photos and videos of them at her father John Mellencamp's concert at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. First he met a cougar, then he met the Cougs. Mellencamp captioned the post, revealing Conley as the man she's been referring to as the Valley Guy. Conley is more than a decade younger than Mellencamp, works as a financial benefits analyst, and holds an MBA from the University of Southern California, according to his LinkedIn profile. Mellencamp's new relationship comes as she continues to share updates about her health following her stage 4 cancer diagnosis, treatment, and current scans that show no detectable cancer. Who's celebrating a birthday today? Drummer Dennis Elliott of Foreigner is 76. Comedian Elaine Boozler is 74. Actor Dennis Leary is 69. Journalist Bob Woodruff is 65. Drummer Blas Elias of Slaughter is 59. Actor Edward Norton is 57. Actor Christian Slater is 57. Actor Caitlin Olsen is 51. Comedian Andy Samberg is 48. Singer Mika is 43. Artist model Frances Bean Cobain is 34. And actor Maya Mitchell is 33. Here's the horoscopes. Aries. Is there a desire to escape, glossing over deeper issues? Seeking pleasure could lead to an emotional spiral today. Taurus. A close partnership may press on a story from your past. Is a small issue suddenly becoming huge? Gemini. Turning one small task into a full production? Going overboard is likely. Cancer. A playful impulse can create a strain on your budget. The thrill is real, but so it may be the receipt. Leo, experiencing growing pains? An opportunity for expansion may coincide with some intense feelings. Work through what's coming up. Virgo, a loaded conversation reveals what you've been avoiding. Itching to defend your position? Silence may be the smartest reply. Libra, tempting to overspend for the group? Reconnect with your priorities. Scorpio, feelings are impossible to hide today, whether positive or challenging. Everyone will see it. Sagittarius, you're full of big ideas today, but are they being accompanied by underlying fears? Move through the unknown. Capricorn, a social connection can stir up questions about trust and loyalty. Are they looking for more access to you? Aquarius, your ambitions may overwhelm a close relationship today. Can the path to success factor in someone else's needs too? Pisces, bold plans collide with your actual bandwidth. Do you have the energy to take on what you're envisioning? Well, you've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, August 18th, 2026. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 821-5555. Your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.